Hello and welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today for the Women in Leadership Talk podcast. We are super excited. We have Dr. Stacy Irvine with us today. Stacy, welcome.
So good to be here.
Well, we're thrilled that you're able to join us. And if it's okay, I'm going to take a minute and just really introduce you to our audience. Give them a little bit of background about you so they know, who they're listening to today. So Dr. Stacy has worked in health and fitness industry most of her life, first as a coach for many sports, where she was dedicated to training athletes, competing for provincial and national teams. Today, she's the founder and co-owner of Totum Life Science, which is a national leader in sports medicine, fitness, and healthcare industry. She also works regularly in Canadian and US media as a health and fitness expert for Cityline Breakfast TV. She's also the author of, and we're very excited about this, Your Better Instincts. For years, she has acquired specialized training related to the high performance coaching and her clinical practice. And so her clientele can range from beginners to elites, to pro athletes, and as well as having a few celebrities join her. So Stacy, we're thrilled that you're here today and very excited to tap into, your expertise, your knowledge, and, really just get to know you a bit more.
I'm thrilled to be here. I always love being a part of anything that, helps women be successful. And I think after this pandemic, it's gotten even more difficult for us. So I think it's really important that we all kind of work together and try to recover from this and get a little bit healthier and, back on the right track.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's so funny you mentioned that because I saw my doctor yesterday and I hadn't seen her in person in it's been almost 2.5 years. Yeah. And she, of course, they do the weigh in and height. And I'm like, okay, that's not my favorite part. And then she said to me, she goes, Vicki, I have 500 patients. And she said, you're the only patient I've had that hasn't gained weight through the pandemic.
Wow.
Well, I started laughing and I said, well, it's a good thing I went on a diet about 6 months ago.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah.
And behind you.
Exactly. Because she would have been on me, had I showed up with that extra several pounds. So, finding a solution to motivate an entire planet to live healthier lives is just not happening. I mean, there's so many different diets, so many different exercise programs, like all of these things. And we see obesity is definitely on the rise. We're consuming more junk food than ever. And I think that's probably, with the pandemic, that certainly has escalated even more so. But we're also getting far less sleep. And, as you and I were talking about a minute ago, the mental health issues are just off the charts, and especially with our younger people. And I think part of it too, Stacy, is that even though we may consume better food or good food, our soils and everything they've lost some of the nutrients that we so desperately need. And so we have all this science and we've communicated in so many different languages, how to have a better life, how to have a better body. It's still not happening. And so I was really excited when I saw that you had written this book about, how do we reconnect with our superpower and really get in tune with our better instincts. So let's jump in. Let's talk about this. Share with our audience, what is the secret? How do we do this?
I love it. I wish that there was one secret, and what you've said is exactly true. And I'm always based in the science and the data. And the hardest part for the data for me is that we've regressed as a population. We have all these technological advances. We have all these scientific healthcare advances. But believe it or not, even prior to the pandemic, life expectancy in the United States was going on a downward trend. And that's pretty incredible when you really start to think about it. And the other really sad part is it's diseases of despair are on the way up. So we see suicides, drug overdoses, and those types of things that are drastically on the rise. In British Columbia, a statistic just came out about the number of opioid deaths this year, and it is tragic. And to me, it's a light bulb moment to say, wow, we're really not getting it right now, and we have to start to pay more attention to our health and to our mental well-being. And we have to start to figure out, how do we integrate all of our wonderful new technology in our life in a good way and not in a bad way. And I pulled a quote from the book that I think applies to this. So I'm a big fan of Charles Darwin. And so here's the book. And the quote I thought was interesting related to your question is, "It's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives. It's the one that is most adaptable to change. The very essence of instinct is that it's followed independently of reason." So what that's saying is that throughout all of our history of being human beings, the people or the animals that adapt the best to what comes at them are the ones that survive the best. And I think this pandemic has really shown us that our ability to adapt has been tested over and over and over again.
Yeah.
As a small business owner, I think every day we had to call health, Public Health Ontario, and say, okay, what are the rules today? And we had to keep changing and adapting and going online, as we all have, as you and I are here today. And that's great. But we also need to realize that those adaptations can take a toll on us.
Yeah.
And we want to really establish, okay, what are the good things that are happening and what are the things that aren't so great, and how do I get rid of those things?
Wow. I mean, that's so true. And what you just shared about change, like if we don't change, we die. Right. And so we have to have that agility and that adaptability to be able to navigate. And a lot of people, to your point, have really struggled in being able to do that over these last 2 years, and have felt isolated and alone. So not an easy journey to navigate, no question. But also there's been a lot of good things too. I think that, it has helped us reconnect with that stillness within, and getting out in nature, and, really connecting as a family even more so, because we were all running so fast before.
Exactly. And that's to the point of picking the good things. The book has a whole chapter on nature and why nature is so important to us. And, human beings have lived for a very small portion of time the way we live today, but we've lived for thousands and thousands of years as hunters and gatherers, and people who were outside all the time, and people who never had a computer screen in front of them. And somehow we think we can make this drastic shift, and our bodies and our brains are going to be okay with it. And unfortunately, I think this data is telling us that we're not okay with it, and that our bodies need that time in nature. They need that strong connection with our families and with our friends and our community. And those are the pieces that we are missing for sure. Yes.
Especially those connections. Those connections are so vital to the survival. So what has your experience shown you with how, when we make certain decisions or we take certain actions, that impact, on our overall health? And why do you think we continue to go back to those choices?
I'm assuming you're kind of saying, like, why do we make the bad ones?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I believe that instincts, the reason I wrote the book with the title Instincts is they do drive our behaviors. And we have these needs. We have to eat, we have to move, we have to connect with other human beings. And that is vital to us actually being alive. Okay. So when we're aware of those drives and what causes those behaviors, that's a very good thing for all of us, because then we understand, you wake up and you say, oh, I'm thirsty. Well, obviously you're dehydrated, and you understand that, and you say, okay, I will feel better if I drink some water right now. And we all know that's a very basic example of a good habit that is driven by a feeling or a need or an instinct, wake up, get some water. However, we've become a society with a lot of coping mechanisms And, the extended part of a coping mechanism is an addiction. And what we've done is we've taken some of our drives, and instead of understanding them, we have been coping with them. So caffeine, when you wake up, is a great example. And believe me, I love coffee and I love my caffeine. However, when it becomes a thing where you need it 8 times a day, then it's becoming a little bit more into the addiction side. So instead, what you should be thinking is, why am I so tired? Well, I'm not a good sleeper. Okay, so let's go back and deal with that. And we have to kind of structure our lives in a way where we really start to think about, okay, what are the things that I'm doing, my behaviors that are really good for me, and what are my behaviors that are really bad for me? These devices are very addictive, and unfortunately, they are the things right now that are giving us our hits of serotonin and a little bit of adrenaline. And also, they're very good at capturing our attention when we could get serotonin from, giving our partner a hug or connecting really with our kids, before they leave the door. That takes effort from us, but it's a much healthier way for our whole family to work. Or, you have a dog and you go walk your dog and you get your serotonin and things like that from that. That interaction is much healthier than, hopping on the phone and trying to get that from there.
Yeah. Yeah. It was funny when you were just saying that. I was thinking about like, even just going out, and I was with a group of women last night and we were talking about going out and hugging a tree, right? It sounds crazy, but it's like, go hug that tree and listen. What, cause that grounds you and brings you back to nature. And totally agree with you. I think sometimes, it starts out as a innocent or a micro moment of, have that cup of coffee and then, oh yeah, I'm tired. I need that little boost, or a hit of sugar, or a glass of wine. Like I know, just talking to girlfriends through COVID, wine has kind of been the go-to, right?
It has.
Yeah. And so it's, how do we recognize that? And what is the underlying, right? What's happening inside that we feel that we need to have that?
Yes.
Okay. Love what you're saying.
That is the question. And a lot of it goes back to our instincts, because we've always had those instincts. So a glass of wine is a perfect example. Alcohol sales were up, I believe, 30% during the pandemic. That's remarkable. And now we're seeing much higher rates of depression and all other types of mental health issues. And I really do believe that those two are very linked. And I know from my experience personally and my experience with my friends, especially in the early days of the pandemic, everything was shut down. Every night was a Friday night.
Yeah.
And we were all sad and we were all scared, and we were not allowed to connect with each other. Remember, we had to stay in our homes, in our little bubbles. So alcohol became for many of us, it became kind of a crutch that was like, okay, well, at least I'll watch a movie, which is your distraction, and I'll have a glass of wine, and that's going to make me feel a little bit better, until the next morning when you wake up and go, oh my God, I feel horrible. It's recognizing, I think, too, and allowing yourself to say, those are perfectly normal feelings. There's nothing wrong with me. I just need to find a better way to deal with it. And those chemicals in our brain are always going to be there. They are driven by our instincts in many ways, but to recognize them and say, okay, here's a better thing I should do. I should go out for a walk, and I should set myself up to have a really good night's sleep, because come tomorrow morning, I'm going to feel way better, and mentally my stress level is going to be down. And, just realize when the negative patterns are becoming a really bad influence in our life, we might have to take them back a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's so important. I know one of my friends, she and I do a monthly check-in now, right? And we say, okay, when it comes to the wine consumption, we're like, okay, if we go over this amount, we have to pay each other $250. And so neither one of us are willing to give up $250, right? So it actually has helped us both take that step back. And it's not even about the wine. It's more of the awareness and being highly in tune to why do we feel that we needed that, right? And so you do start to shift the conversation. So let's just talk a little bit about how we create some of these new routines, and especially when it comes to fitness, right? Fitness, and I think fitness, food, and mindset are probably the biggest areas that has been a struggle for most of us this year, right? Because the whole conversation has been pandemic, COVID, what it's taken away from us. And so how do we start to create new routines and shift from that to things that do fuel us more?
It's a great question. And when you say, what's the secret? This is a question that I've dealt with, obviously, my whole career, is how do I do this? And as you mentioned at the beginning, we have all the information. We know what to do. The information is out there. We know how to eat. We know how to exercise. There's millions of videos that can tell us, like, the tiniest little specific thing about our food or our exercise or anything that we want. And then the question fundamentally becomes, why don't we do it? My gut feeling about this is that, as smart as we are, we look at food, fitness, those types of things in a very non-analytical way. We look at it in an emotional way. And it leads us to worse decisions. And we can explain away things like why I didn't move today or why I didn't eat well today, but it always comes from an emotional place. How do we do that better? Obviously, in the book, I talk about, first of all, we got to understand our instincts. And sometimes when I'm working with my clients, I say things like, if you were looking at your bank accounts and if you were looking at your spending, you do it in a scientific, I would hope, a scientific mathematical way. Because if you did it in an emotional way, you'd get nowhere, right? And a lot of the things we're talking about, food, exercise, mindset, those are scientific things. So it doesn't make sense for us to approach it in an emotional way.
I love that.
And how do you do it? So you look at your day and you say, okay, how do I normally feel in the morning? Am I tired? Am I energetic? What's happening? So if you're tired, there's a few reasons. You're not getting enough sleep. You're very dehydrated. Maybe even you're hungover. So then you have to take a step back and say, okay, I cannot start my day like that anymore. I have to fix what's happening before, because waking up exhausted is just setting you up for failure no matter what. Then you go through your day and you say, okay, what's my energy level like here? And what's my energy level like here? And often I find people will say, okay, when I hit 3 o'clock, I just want to lie down. My bed's right over there. I just want to lie down and have a nap. And so again, you look at it scientifically. What's happening? Are you dehydrated? What did you eat for lunch? So we know that if we eat a bunch of carbs or, fried foods or things like that, that's great for a treat. And I love that. And I love all types of food. And I love going out for lunches, with friends that take a long time and have a great time. But I know that my productivity is going to go down. So on regular days when we want to be productive and we want to feel good, we say, okay, maybe at lunch I eat really good food. I do something that is healthy, that is fuel. I don't eat too much so that maybe I have a bit of a snack later. And again, so you're looking at it from a scientific standpoint. And then we go to the end of the day and we can say, what do I do that inspires me? Do I enjoy dinner with my family? Because those pieces of our lives are equally important. And that goes to your mindset to say, what's making me happy today? And did I have a great day at work? And what did I accomplish? And who am I sharing that with? Whether it's friends or family, it doesn't matter. Those connections also have a chemical reaction in our brain that's important to us.
Mm-hmm.
And if you find that your nights are spent with, binging Netflix and having a glass of wine to the point where you feel like, you can hardly keep your eyes open, then again, you just have to look at it analytically, scientifically. Okay, that didn't work. What could work? What could I do? What you talk about with your friends and accountability, I love, because I've given examples to other patients and clients where I've said, schedule it with a friend. If you're in this boat, go up and down your street, but probably many other people are in the same boat. So what would be wrong with saying, after dinner at 7:30, would you like to meet with me and we'll walk over to Starbucks and grab a tea or something like that, or we'll just go for a walk. And I guarantee you that will change everything. That will change how you feel. That will change how you sleep. But you have to take your day and you have to look at it from a much more analytical way, not an emotional way.
I love that. I love the example you use too with like your bank account, right? Because you're right. You would not approach your bank account in an emotional way. And that really puts it in perspective. Like I had light bulbs going off when you were saying that. I think that's such an important aspect of it. And it's to also distract you from the routine that you always do, right? Like really looking at it differently and how do you feel the next day? And that was one thing I did notice even for myself, because I would have those few glasses of wine and then the next day I'd be foggy and I didn't sleep good. And I would be like, oh, I feel so awful. Like, I don't want to feel that way. I want to wake up and feel energized and excited to welcome the day. And so you do, I think, start to shift some of the intention when you can really relate it. Because why would you want to do something that makes you feel bad? Right.
Exactly.
Typically the whole point when we eat junk food or, we have excessive wine, we think at the moment it's making us feel better. So I love that. I love that, how to move that from, emotion to looking at it very scientifically and starting to question why you're doing it.
Yes.
So what else would you share with our audience that, like from the book perspective, like you've taken this, time and you've got all this beautiful experience that you've put into your book about, how your better instinct. So what would you say would be a helpful tip to get people to tap in to that instinct instead of ignoring it? Because I think most of us, we do ignore it, right?
We do. And here's the tricky piece, as I'm sure you find with what you do, everybody's different.
Yeah.
And what I did at the end of the book is I interviewed, I believe there's 8. So I picked 8 high performers. I have Chris Hatfield and I have Getty Lee and I have Alex Lifeson. I have Tracy Moore from Cityline. I have Linda Reeves. I'm just flipping through, looking at the names here. So, and I've got Dr. Deborah McNamara, and she's a PhD, like a brilliant psychologist. And what I wanted to get at was exactly what you're saying is, first thing is, have the knowledge. So understand and accept that these instincts exist and understand what they are. That is the key. It's the key to anything in our life. If we want to drive a car, we have to understand, how does the car work? Mm-hmm. If we are doing something very technical at work and we don't understand what the background is and why things are happening the way they are, we're probably not going to do a good job. The same goes for us as human beings. Understanding where those drives come from, why they're there, why we need to do certain things. The kind of the key things that I have in the book that must be done are: sleep is key. Fuel is key. So eating well, and it doesn't have to be all the time. And there's nothing strict about eating, but it is your fuel. So understand that if you put horrible gasoline into your